Hey, so this is Tuesday, March 25th, 2025. Still waiting for chemo. It's been 6 weeks since I was told that it was cancer. There was technically an 8 day between this was most likely cancer and cancer, but that was really the day that I knew. So 6 weeks waiting. Friday, so another 3 day wait. I get my chemo orientation, I'm calling it. So that is the appointment with the oncology pharmacy team to teach me all about the chemos I'm taking. I'm taking FECD, is the type of chemo I'm having. And the teaching me about the 5 prescriptions I've gotten to counter the chemo's effects. So, one is to stimulate white blood cell production to make sure that I don't get really sick, and some anti nausea meds. I think one is to help not have an allergic reaction to the D part of the chemo. I'll learn all about it on Friday though and kind of update. I don't know if this is going to be my first or my second video. The first one I did, I don't know if I'm going to post yet. It's kind of hard. Sorry, my cat is. Say hi. My cat's is getting involved. This pancake. Um, yeah, the blog I feel much more normal in the videos. I'm not a video person, but I think this is going to be easier through some of it, and I think it's easier to. My hope with this is kind of twofold: to document for myself, but also hopefully to help someone else. I found, and I'm already feeling bad that I didn't start this earlier, but I found the early days there wasn't a lot of support, a lot of, blogs or videos or anything. There's kind of a lot about looking back. There's not as much while you're going through, and I kind of want there to be. So that's why I'm doing this and rambling. Um, yeah, because it's this high anxiety part, and everyone keeps telling me that this is the worst part. Waiting for treatment. Obviously, there can be a lot of bad things later, but um, the waiting for treatment is one of the worst anxiety things. And again, I find it hard that there's not a lot for that. So that's kind of why I'm doing this starting early before I've even started treatment. Um, yeah, so waiting, so chemo orientation. They call it a teaching appointment. I'm calling it orientation on Friday, which will be really good. And my partner's coming too, so that he can help learn. He's nervous about the side effects and what that's going to look like, especially as parents of a young child. Our daughter's almost 2. Um, yeah, so it's a lot of sorry, my cat is very much bothering me. Yeah, it's a lot of anxiety, a lot of not knowing. I just touch on work. I'm finding it really hard to know what to do, and I think it's kind of becoming clear I'm not going to be working. Um, it's possible I could work on the 2 weeks off, so I'll have chemo once every 21 days for 6 cycles. So it's going to be about 4 months. And lots of people are saying actually I worked the whole time, other than my a couple days for chemo. Others are saying they can't work at all. I'm finding it really hard because I get 26 weeks of EI, which is great. But because I've been working a much lower paid job and not even full time than I'm used to, having worked in the nonprofit sector before, and now working in retail since having my daughter, um, it's not going to be near what it was when I was on maternity leave. So a lot of me is like, look, I should work because when I have surgery, I won't be able to work. I'm recovering from surgery. And then after that, it looks like I'll have radiation. And where I am, there is no radiation at the hospital in my city. So I'll have to travel just over an hour every day, probably for 5 to 6 weeks, based on what I've seen others. I don't have my treatment plan yet, but that'll be very hard, right? Like driving 2 hours a day to go for your appointment, it's going to be really hard to work around, especially because radiation can be tiring. Um, And then if I choose to have reconstruction afterwards, there would be a reconstruction surgery. So part of me is very much like, I should save my EI for then, because during chemo, I technically could work. I could take a week off and then work the other 2 weeks. My boss and the managers at Chapters Indigo have been just phenomenal. So great. Like, I couldn't ask for better. I mean, I wish, obviously, I had a job that made more with LTD, but I don't. And they have been as wonderful as they possibly could have been, and just amazingly accommodating. So I know that they would accommodate that. It's hard to know. And maybe I'm going back and forth on it. Maybe I should try to go back for a little bit. And then if the side effects get too much, I can always leave. I can do a week off during chemo, make sure that I'm well rested, and then do the other 2 weeks. On the flip side, I'm like, will that make all of my energy go into my retail shifts and not have as much for my daughter? It's really hard to know. And it's so hard, right? Because so many people are like, oh, I was fine, or oh, I was sick. And you don't know. I do know that during pregnancy, the nausea and fatigue can be incredibly hard. And so that can be definitely a predictive factor. But also my oncologist, who is lovely, has given me a lot of anti-nausea meds. So who knows? Yeah, so it's hard because it's not clear cut. I mean, obviously, I'm incredibly grateful that I hit enough hours for EI. I'm incredibly grateful that I have that. Also, my husband and I own a comedy club. It is a corporation, so luckily I am an employee of the corporation and have been putting into EI as a normal employee because it is incorporated, which is great. So, I could keep working at the comedy club and get my hours, get some work there. If I can't work, because at least that a lot of the work is, kind of computer work, just doing the website, that kind of stuff. So I could keep doing that and getting paid as long as the shows sell out. Please buy tickets. As long as we do well enough, I can get paid for that time. And that's a little easier than a retail job where I'd be on my feet and working with the public and having to, shelf books. And I'm not someone that can sit around. I know I've had some people be like, oh, just get them to get you a stool and sit on cash all day. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure they would do that. I'm sure they are incredibly accommodating and they would do that. I would go nuts sitting there all day. I have to be doing something. My cash hour shifts I hate, because if it's not super busy, then I'm not super busy and I can't sit there. So I don't know. It's definitely hard. Today I don't have any appointments. Kelly, my partner, and his one of his older daughters is off to Quebec City to see Jelly Roll. So super excited about that. It sounds so silly, but I've been really concerned about that, about but making sure he could go. And again, it's difficult because, look, the waiting for treatment is one thing, and obviously, like, I want chemo, and that's the most important thing. But the waiting really does throw your life completely off. Things like, could he go to this concert, which I know sounds so ridiculous, and he wasn't as, like, he was not worried about it at all. Even last night, he was like, I don't have to go. But keeping some sort of normalcy. And that's what I find hard. They say, oh, the waiting is hard for treatment. It's also hard because it's just so disruptive. Like, can I go away for a day? Or am I about to get a call about getting a port put in? Or, just anything, right? I don't know what. Your whole life is on hold. Can I go back to work? Well, maybe. But am I going to be starting chemo on Monday? Or will it be another 2-week wait? And that's really hard. I'd rather have some sort of a timeline, and I know that it's hard for them to know, but if it's going to be another 2 weeks to chemo, I'm absolutely going to ask if I can go back to work. But I don't know, and you're just constantly, like, waiting for the phone to ring, and it's exhausting. I don't think that they think about that as much. Like, they realize, oh, it's hard to wait for treatment. But it's hard. Like I don't know today. I could get a call about getting a port put in, or maybe another test. I don't think there's going to be any more testing, but it's always possible. Um, yeah, or I could be told, hey, you're having chemo Monday, and it's like, cool. Kelly's in St. John on Monday. Um, if it's my first day of chemo, I'm sure he'll cancel. But it's this constant, like, when, yeah, it's just a constant waiting, and it's really, really frustrating. Um, I know I've kind of rambled about that, but it's kind of what these are going to be. This is not going to be a structured YouTuber or professionally edited thing. This is going to be a random vlog of kind of just complaining. Yeah. All right. I'm going to try to get a few things done today at least. I've been doing a lot of reading and things on side effects and how to deal with them. I feel like I feel like I could take an exam on cancer now, though I've learned so much. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna try to get a few things done. Tomorrow I have counseling, which is great. I have therapy with my new counselor, who I really like after the first appointment at least. So that's really good. She had emailed me to check in, which was really nice, just to see how the appointment had went. And tomorrow I also have nutrition and breast cancer. So the cancer support program through our local hospital foundation has these programs. So it's nutrition and breast cancer. So it's a 2-part series. So hopefully I'll get to go next week. But again, who knows, right? I'm scheduled to do both parts of it. But am I starting chemo next week? Who knows? So yeah, just that, just feeling of your life being so unpredictable. And for me, my anxiety is really relieved by having some predictability. And so having this, it's hard. At least once I know my first chemo date, I'll be able to map out the next 4 months. Obviously, depending on blood work and things, and depending on how I'm feeling, chemo could be delayed if I'm having issues. But at least I'll know the general structure. Whereas right now, it's just you don't know when that's starting. So, yeah, I'm gonna try to do something today. Yeah, just fill my time. Yeah, this is very rambly. Hopefully, I'll get a little better. But even it's funny. You look back at some of the YouTubers I love, and their first videos are very rambly too. And again, I don't expect this to be professional. I just want this to kind of document the hell of cancer. And